Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We have recently completed our first season as an expansion team in Major League Baseball. The offseason started yesterday. Hope that you're enjoying the series. I'm definitely enjoying putting this one together, kind of building the franchise over a period of time as we did in the early episodes. Really appreciate all of the comments and feedback and likes of the videos and subscriptions. And if you haven't subscribed, would appreciate it if you consider subscribing to the channel and helping us continue to grow what we are doing here. We are in the arbitration period and heading close to free agency. And then I also made a promise towards the end of last episode that I realized I did not keep. So I want to address that quickly as well. First of all, as far as the arbitration eligible players, we've made offers to 4 of the 6 arbitration eligible players. Max Meyer and Brandon Williamson are both angry that they were not used as the closer last season, so they are unwilling to discuss a contract with us. That said, we have still made arbitration offers to them, but there's a chance that, and probably a likelihood that we won't get either of them signed before the arbitration hearings, and we'll need to go to arbitration with both of them. The other decision I touched upon at the end of last episode was potentially submitting a qualifying offer for Christian Vasquez. I love his glove. I love the influence he has as a captain in the clubhouse with great personality traits. And he did hit .266 for us this past season, although he doesn't walk a great amount of time. His on-base percentage was still below 300. But we've got money to potentially spend in the coming off season, close to $80 million right now. So my thought is if we get through the next couple of weeks and we see what the free agent catcher situation looks like and there's not a lot out there, maybe we offer him the opportunity to come back for a 1-year deal at $19 million plus. He's looking for 5 years, $14 million plus a season. We don't want to make that type of commitment to him given his age, but worst case scenario, I guess, is we use about a quarter of our money and we have a catcher back next year. Best case scenario is that he declines the QO and we potentially get some draft pick compensation when he signs with somebody else. So that's one of the things that we are going to be looking at. One other thing, got a comment that I've been mispronouncing Martin Perez's name through some of the episodes. I can't claim that I look up the exact pronunciation of every player, so apologies for that. The big guys I know, if a guy's going to have an important role on our team, I look him up. But Perez did end up kind of having a big role pitching as the starting pitcher in our first game ever, and he got a no-hitter for us last year. But he will be very unlikely to be joining us again next season. So it will be one and done for Martin with our Buffalo Wings. Before I get to where I was remiss in our last episode, one other thing I do want to show you. We did make a couple of trades that were basically immediately accepted, which is kind of rare. One was accepted immediately, and one was basically they came back and accepted it when we added in a player when we moved 1 day forward. But it was basically just dumping some of our contracts. Yency Almonte, you may remember we picked him up in a trade slightly before the trade deadline. Didn't really necessarily want to be paying him about $3.7 million next season. He was going to be borderline to make our pitching staff, so we basically just wanted to get the salary off the books. We picked up Pablo Reyes, who is on an expiring contract, so he will become a free agent. So we basically got nothing except we got Almonte's contract off the books, which I'm fine with. And then we also traded 28-year-olds Colby White and Jacob Amaya, who both were members of our team last year. Amaya was a utility infielder, only got 98 at-bats and only hit a .173. I think we can find a better player to fill that role than him. Colby White had a 5.34 ERA over 86 innings pitched, did strike out 118 batters, but allowed 19 home runs and walked 40. Just did not see him likely being someone who was going to make our 26-man roster, so just wanted to get those major league contracts off the books. We also had to throw in Ishmael Baez, a holdover who doesn't have the best personality in the world and is never going to be much of a major leaguer. And we got minor league shortstop Roberto Martinez in return. He is organizational filler, probably will be playing in Double-A this coming year. Unlikely to ever be anything at the major league level except for potentially a utility infielder. This, similar to the Almonte trade, was really just trying to get something in return for getting a couple of contracts off the books of players who were not in our future. And now finally, before we get the episode really going, turning to something that I mentioned towards the end of the last episode that I meant to comment on, and then I got distracted, as sometimes happens, and didn't do it. But wanted to take a quick look at how our farm system ranks now that the off-season has begun. You can see we're 7th out of 32 overall. And we do at this point have 6 top 100 prospects. Andres Medina, very controversial player, I know, with some of you, given my commitment to him and the total lack of development he's had in his first 2 years in rookie ball, when he's never even gotten off the interstate. Like the personality, like the excellent catcher defensive ability, the question is whether his bat is ever going to develop. As far as him being a revolutionary player with great defense and great offense, seems pretty clear that that ship has sailed. He is only 19 years old, though, so I am not willing to give up on him yet. Some of you have made the very astute point, though, that he has not improved at all. His contact, his power, his eye, his defense has improved modestly, but everything else, his actual abilities, according to our scout, have never improved, and his ceiling continues to get lower. So I am willing to acknowledge that initial results on him are not favorable, but we're not going to cut ties with him just yet, and we're going to hope that maybe this year, with some appropriate coaching and some good luck, he'll start to develop a little bit better in rookie ball. Deshaun Seifu, our number one overall pick in the last draft, is viewed as the number 38 prospect in baseball. We've spent a lot of time on him in previous episodes, basically went through every level of our minor league system last year, and even made his major league debut at the end of the year. I think probably leaning towards him starting in AAA, but we'll see what the roster looks like when we get to spring training. Santiago Marte, a center fielder, another former international free agent signing, just about to turn 18 years old. My thought is he will likely begin the season in the rookie ball in our DSL team next year. Edgar Ojeda was a guy looking for huge money last year, was allegedly impossible to sign. We ended up signing him for a little over $15 million after he slipped to us in the 6th round, and he's now viewed as the number 53 prospect in baseball. Only hit .220 with 3 home runs in 59 at-bats in rookie ball, but he's only 18 years old also. Not the perfect personality, not perfect defensively, doesn't have a ton of speed, no clue how to bunt, but if he comes close to completely developing, that bat is going to be potentially very interesting. So interested in seeing what Mr. Ojeda can do for us in the coming years. Jonte Powers, guy that we picked in the 2nd round of this past draft, viewed as the number 74 prospect in baseball. He also struggled as an 18-year-old in rookie ball, hit just a $115 and 52 at-bats. Like the work ethic that he has. We still think he's got good potential. Hopefully we'll get more out of him next year. And then last but not least, among those top 100 prospects, Vance Honeycutt, A guy who was our 8th-round draft pick in 2024 has steadily risen up through our minor league system. Rookie ball in 24, A ball in 25. Last year between high A, double A, and triple A. Struggled a bit at the triple A level after hitting 37 homers combined in high A ball and double A ball. But with that speed, decent outfield range and error rating, and a potentially bit above average major league bat if he completely develops, and he's really just got avoiding strikeouts and contact where he still needs to develop a little bit. Think that he could be a useful player for us for several years to come. In addition to trying to prove our major league team, I think a focus for this offseason is going to be bringing in some international talent for our DSL team. 15 and 42 last year. They have not generally been good at all. Could go back. I believe we've had the same manager there every season, so we can go back. I'm sure there's another way to do this. There's 600 ways to do everything in OOTP, but yeah, Ramon Santiago has been our manager there for 3 years. 16 wins, 24 wins, and then 15 wins. So 400 winning percentage is the best that we've done, and we've been close to a 250 winning percentage twice. May need to sign a veteran or two who is a little bit older and a little more accomplished at positions where we don't have any real prospects to hopefully ensure that that team can be a little more successful on the field next year, which hopefully will give a small boost to the player happiness and ultimately their development down there in the DSL. And as the offseason begins, there are some potentially interesting players who are going to be free agents. Our hope is that Ohtani does not re-sign with the Cubs and we can make a run at him. We've got plenty of money to spend. In the real world, Shohei Ohtani going to a expansion team in Buffalo in 2027 is a extremely low probability scenario. In fact, I'm willing to say that there is no chance that would actually happen in real life, but we can potentially make it happen. A few other interesting players out there. As you can see, there's a little bit of talent that could be hitting the free agent market this year. We've got tons of money to spend if it does hit the free agent market. The question is just how many of these players may be re-signed by their current teams over the next few weeks before we get to free agency. And that will also help influence what we decide to do with Christian Vázquez. If we decide we're going to be trying to make a run at Ohtani, Robert, McNeil, and or Alcantara or Shane Bieber, we may not want to even make that $19 million commitment potentially to Vázquez. If a couple of those players are off the board, it may make more sense for us to do it. You can see Vázquez certainly is the premier-looking catcher that's going to be out there in terms of defense, certainly. If you want to look for someone with a little bit of pop in the bat, I guess you're looking for a Mitch Garver or Danny Jansen. Don't love any of the options. So as I said, there is a part of me that thinks we make the qualifying offer to Vázquez because we've got so much money to spend anyways. And if he accepts it, we've got him for one more year with his great defense to help our pitching staff. If he doesn't accept it, we hopefully get some draft pick compensation in return when he signs somewhere else. And good news, the arbitration-eligible players that we made offers to, Mike Baumann, Mike Burrows, Jose Siri, and Bryce Miller are all signed. So that's good news. Got a little boost from the signing of one of them to get fan interest back to 99. So that is positive. Trying to make one final trade. Trying to just ship away reliever Matt Cantorino. He's a guy who spent this year with us in AAA Albany and he is on a major league contract, but he's got no options left after this season. So just looking to kind of get the money off the books and hoping we could get something in return. There were a few offers for him. It's all veterans making big money. We had tried to bring on Willie, who is now with St. Louis. Thought that the presence in the clubhouse would be good. Solid defensive player who could play second or third for us with a little bit of a bat. But if they were going to retain 50% of his contract, which is for another 2 seasons, they would need Medina, the top prospect in our system, starting shortstop Made, Jace Barofin, top young hitter in our system, or Tommy Edman, who we have signed for this year and is a little bit better defensively perhaps, probably not quite as good offensively. But it didn't seem to me to make much sense to dump Edman for Willie just to get rid of Cantorino. If we can't get anything decent back for Cantorino, we can always just waive and DFA him before the free agent period to ensure that we're not making a minimum salary commitment to him for next season. And it's kind of funny, we were earlier this episode talking about Ramon Santiago, our DSL manager, and apparently the Reds have made him an offer to be their hitting coach. So he is looking for a promotion from us. We really don't have anywhere to promote him to, and he certainly hasn't been incredibly successful for us. So I think we will wish him well, let him move on to Cincinnati, and we'll find somebody else to bring on to our DSL team who hopefully will be a positive influence on those young, impressionable players that we're trying to develop. And also you can see we've been re-signing some minor league free agents in our system, and we've also been trying to add a couple of other minor league free agents just to bolster our minor leagues. Part of it is in an effort to ensure that we've got a little more quality in the DSL next year to hopefully ensure that we're winning closer to half of our games than a quarter of our games. And we've got a somewhat interesting trade offer that came to us from the Dodgers. They're willing to send us Johnny DeLuca, 28-year-old center fielder, not as good defensively as Jose Siri, who's our current center fielder, but looks like a much better bat than Siri, and is a competent-ish major league hitter. I think he'd be an interesting player for us to add. He's only going to be making $2.2 million this upcoming year, so we could certainly fit him in. It looks like they signed him ahead of arbitration hearing. They're looking for our backup catcher, Israel Pineda, which I would certainly do. They're looking for minor league shortstop Gavin Chilat, who is in rookie ball for us at the age of 21. Not really a big-time prospect. I'd be happy to do that. But they're also looking for Loydel Chapelli, who was our starting left fielder this past season. If I can somehow get Chapelli out of the deal and put somebody else in there with Pineda and Gavin Chilat, I think it might make sense to do. Pineda had a solid year for us as a backup catcher, hit .268, 7 homers, and 127 at-bats. That said, I don't love that our backup catcher is only average defensively, even though he's got a pretty good bat for a backup catcher. And we do currently have in the organization Hunter Fiducia, who's was in AAA for us this past year. A little better defensively, not as good a bat, but someone that we could certainly plug in as our backup catcher next season if we needed to. So I'm going to try to investigate maybe getting something done with the Dodgers to bring DeLuca into our system. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world to have him on the roster as competition for Jose Siri. Potentially maybe even that allows us to move Siri into more of a fourth outfielder role. I love his glove. I like his speed. But the bat is not ideal. And unfortunately, we got a quick no way from the Dodgers when we tried to modify the deal. They really wanted Lloyd DeLaChapelle. You can see we kept Chillat in the deal. We swapped in Fiducia for Pineda as far as the backup catcher. And then we also offered Cantorino, who we've been looking to move, as well as minor league outfielder Brian Buelvis, who was with us in AAA last year where he hit over 300. So although they reached out to us, probably not going to get something done, unfortunately. And the Dodgers came back to us with a counteroffer, but we also made a counteroffer to them. Their counteroffer for us to get DeLuca was to give up corner infielder Nolan Jones, utility infielder Nick York, and 23-year-old outfielder Eric Pena, who's probably going to be on our major league roster next year. Don't want to give up that for DeLuca, but we did throw another offer out to them where we included third baseman Juan Brito, 25-year-old that we picked up in the expansion draft, hit 229 for us in AAA this year. Looks like he's probably a 4A kind of player. Don't love the low work ethic being in our system either. So it would be Brito, Chillat, Buelvis, and Fiducia for Johnny DeLuca, but we've got to add in one more player. And, Kevin Made, Chase Barofin, Sean Sullivan, Vance Honeycutt, some of the big players in our system. Second baseman Ilvin Fernandez, who looks like he could be a interesting utility infielder for us down the line, but would consider throwing him in. And they're also looking for minor league pitcher Samuel Valerio, who spent the year in Double-A for us. Was pretty good, 14-7 record, 238 strikeouts in 158 innings and a 3.25 ERA. Obviously, his stuff is off the charts. His control is the issue. He walked 86 batters in those 158 innings, and he's also an extreme fly ball pitcher with mediocre movement, so he gave up 19 home runs in Double-A. Now, he does throw in triple digits, so, there's certainly something here. But I do feel if we can include one of those guys in the deal, I think I'm inclined to do it because, like I said, we're not really giving up anyone who's got a big part of our future, and we're getting a 28-year-old center fielder who's going to have 3 more years under team control, including $2.2 million next season, who's a more than competent defensive center fielder. Not great. I'm not claiming he's as good as Jose Siri, but he is a much better bat than Jose Siri in center field. He's durable. He's played over 150 games 3 straight years for the Dodgers. Batting average certainly not great, but I think he's a guy who could help our team. And although Valerio, with his putrid control and his mediocre movement, does not really have the profile of someone that will ultimately be on a major league team that I am leading in most situations, I think based on what he did last year and just based on the very special stuff that he has, it doesn't make sense to trade him. I think we're going to put in Ilvin Hernandez. The best kind of role for Fernandez with those defensive ratings and that potential batting profile is a utility infielder. He hit 285 in Double-A this year, but he's probably a 240-ish hitter at the major league level, and he's not so good defensively that I feel he's irreplaceable. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, I'm going to counter them one more time, which I'm probably going to regret. I was going to just do the trade, but I'm going to see if we put in the guy that we've been trying to just dump. in Matt Cantorino, throw him back into the deal and see what they think of that. And Ramon Santiago has unfortunately moved on to be the hitting coach, so we'll be looking for a new manager. Apparently they view Cantorino as a negative value because instead of accepting 6 other players to get the deal done, they'll only accept 3. So I think I'm going to go back and we're going to add in Ilvin Fernandez and go ahead and complete the trade. Brito and actually... Oh, yeah, I guess we got to include Cantorino now. That's fine. I just want to get the money off the books. I was going to waive and DFA him to get that guaranteed major league contract off the books anyways, and there really wasn't much interest in him. Fiducia, I don't think is as good as Pineda for our backup catcher, even though he's a little better defensively. I really do kind of like Pineda's bat. Chillat, not a huge prospect. Cantorino, I want to get rid of. Vuelvas is kind of a 4A player, and then Juan Brito and Ilvin Fernandez are both guys who could be backup infielders at the major league level. But, you know, Fernandez is 25, Brito's 25. These guys really are kind of at the age where they aren't really even prospects anymore. So I think we are going to go ahead and bring Johnny DeLuca onto our team to compete with Jose Siri as our starting center fielder next year. So we are going to go ahead and make that trade, and now we need to go find a manager for our DSL team. And since it is November 15th and the season's been over for a couple of weeks, a fair amount of hiring has already happened. The pickings are a little slim. Looking for a manager. Typically focus on 3 things: how good they are at handling development, how good they are at influencing mechanics, and then how well they get along with the team. Eric Cormier, who is actually our hitting coach at the DSL team, is probably the best candidate overall, but it would be a little bit of a subtraction by addition if we were to move him into the manager slot. The pitching or the hitting coach opportunity set is not as strong as the manager opportunity set, at least in terms of guys who are good at teaching hitting. So I think I'm inclined to keep Cormier as our hitting coach. So Gary Forrester, who's legendary with development but only good with mechanics, would have a good relationship with the DSL guys. So that's definitely someone to consider. The other guy that stands out a little bit to me is Kevin Witt, who's excellent development, good with mechanics, and Witt only expected to have an average relationship with the DSL. So I think that would love someone a little higher on mechanics to help kind of influence talent changes positively, but a guy who is legendary with development, who's also expected to have a good relationship with our team. I think that's a pretty interesting guy to potentially bring on board. So we are going to go ahead and offer a contract to Gary Forrester, looking for $75,000 a year. So that's expensive for a rookie league coach. But we've got money to spend. Let's see if we can lock him up 5 years, $65,000 a year. And we will find out in the coming days if Gary Forrester is going to be our new DSL manager. And we did check in again on both Max Meyer and Brandon Williamson, and they are both still unwilling to negotiate with us at this point. So we are going to keep the offers we made to them out there and see what happens in the arbitration hearings for those 2 players. Big decision we need to think about right now is whether we want to offer the qualifying offer to Christian Vasquez. Still close to $80 million with the trades we've made and the players who have been signed to their arbitration deals before going to arbitration, I guess more accurately. Their 2027 deals so we can avoid going through the arbitration process with those 4 guys that we signed earlier. We've got at this point about 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks till free agency filing. So I think it's just a waiting game at this point. We'll see what happens through award season, and then see who we think are going to be free agents about 10 days from now and decide whether we want to make a QO to Vasquez or not. And good news for the Wings. Loydel Chappelli was Rookie of the Year. That was nice to see. And Jace Barofin was the only other guy who got first place votes. So I guess if you're an expansion team, if you can put yourself in a situation where your first year in the majors, you've got guys who finished first and second in the Rookie of the Year voting, that's a positive thing. Chappelli was a guy that we picked up in the expansion draft, and obviously did a nice job for us. 295, 25 doubles, 16 homers, 49 ribbies, 130 OPS plus, 133 WRC plus, and a 3.2 WAR. Obviously, we kept him on board, did not include him in the DeLuca trade. Feel even better about that now. Jace Barofin, who was our first-round draft choice in 2023, hit 255, 40 doubles, 24 homers, 88 ribbies. Those double home run and RBI figures were the highest for the Buffalo Wings. His OPS plus and his WRC plus were ultimately not as good as Chappelli's. 2.5 WAR, a little lower as well. But both of those guys should be back in our lineup as our likely corner outfielders for this upcoming season. So a 1-2 finish for the Buffalo Wings in the NL Rookie of the Year voting. International amateur free agents were also just revealed. This is one change I made. I think Patrick DeBonis probably influenced me the most on this as far as pushing it back so it doesn't happen right during the playoffs. So I pushed it back so the international amateur free agents are revealed in mid-November, and then we've got November, December, January, and February to run our camps, and then mid-February will be the signing period now, so still before spring training even starts. Felt like that was a somewhat more civilized way to run the international amateur free agency. And taking a look at the crop of international amateur free agents, we're going to have $5.23 million to spend this year. So not as much as some teams based on our performance this past year. Looks like it may not be as deep a class as we've had sometimes in the past. We'll take a look just at the top handful of prospects. And then typically for this first time through international amateur free agency, I basically just will invite these top 7 players into camp unless one of them just has a horrible personality, in which case I might not. Rodolfo Carmona, 16-year-old center fielder out of Venezuela. Really good outfield range, potentially very interesting bat, decent speed, although he's not the best base runner in the world. He's kind of the 5-star prospect. Julio Lugo, a right fielder. Looks like an excellent contact hitter, not a ton of speed. Honorato Ortega, another corner outfielder. Not a lot of speed, not that great defensively, but a potentially useful bat, like that he's durable. Arturo Ramiro, shortstop, really kind of weird profile. His contact, his avoiding strikeouts are both exceptional, potentially. His home run power could be pretty average, but his gap power and his eye, both potentially horrible. So just kind of a batting rating profile that's kind of all over the place. Love the infield range, but again, his error and his arm are probably below average. His turn double play only average. So kind of a unique prospect who looks like he is borderline exceptional in several traits, average in some traits, and then brutal in some traits. And then we'll take a quick look at the three-star prospects at all. Catcher Luis De Valle. Like the personality, like the bat for a catcher, like the durability. Only thing I don't like about him as a catcher is the defense. Pretty mediocre. Arturo Lemus, a second baseman. Not the greatest prospect in the world. A little bit of a bat. And then Nelson Ortuno, another second baseman. Don't love the glove. Don't love the bad work ethic and the poor intelligence and the low adaptability. Do like that he can bunt. Do like that he's got a little bit of speed, and the bat is not horrible. So those are, at least very first blush, the top batting prospects. Top pitching prospects, starting pitcher Juan Guerra out of Venezuela. Looks like he could definitely be a starter. Fastball, slider, sinker, three-pitch arsenal. Potentially stuff that's a little bit above average, average movement, and well above average control. Looks like a at least interesting prospect to consider. And then Ernesto Aguilar, another starting pitching prospect, has a potentially 4 to 5 pitch arsenal. Not as good in terms of his stuff and his movement and his control if he reaches his full potential. That said, he just turned 16 years old and is already throwing in the low to mid 90s. He's got ground ball tendencies. There's some interesting guys out there. We'll obviously spend a lot more time doing a deep dive on what we should do and what we end up doing as we get closer to the actual signing period. But figure we'll probably bring all 9 of those players into camp and figure out one more player who we want to run through some drills for the first training session of 2026 to 2027 International Amateur Free Agency. And Gary Forrester did agree to manage our DSL team, so we once again have a full slate of coaches across our farm system and our major league teams. So probably don't need to give that a lot more thought until next season at this point. And the 1-2 finish for Chappelli and Barofin ended up being, for NL Rookie of the Year, ended up being the only serious contenders we had for any awards, not surprisingly. Also not surprising, Carlos Rodon, 22-8 with a 2.92 ERA, and Spencer Strider, 21-6 with a 2.80 ERA, and winner of the pitching Triple Crown in the National League, were both unanimous Cy Young Award winners. Our potential target, Ohtani, finished second in the NL Cy Young voting. Shinichi Fujioka of the Las Vegas Athletics is your American League MVP. 302 average, 45 homers, 122 runs driven in. So pretty big year for him. 94 walks, led the league, and also led the league in on-base percentage, slugging, OPS, and WRC+. And in our National League, Matt Olson, unanimous most valuable player. I didn't think we were going to have anyone getting votes, but figured I would just take a look. Matt Olson of the Braves hit 302 with a league best 43 homers, 155 ribbies, and 977 OPS, and a league best 166 WRC plus in his MVP season. So we've got 6 days now until free agency filing. So we're going to sim ahead another couple days, see what the potential free agent market looks like at that point. And then we've got to make a decision on what we're going to do with Christian Vasquez. I guess we should maybe check in and just make sure that Vasquez's offer hasn't changed, or his request hasn't changed. As I mentioned, he was looking for 5 years, about $14 million a year the last time we talked to him. So it's come down a little bit, $13.8 million, but he's still looking for a 5-year deal for a guy who's already 36 years old. And we've got big questions about his bat as much as we like the catcher ability, as much as we like the personality, and as much as we have money to spend, I just don't think it would be prudent to give him that long a contract. So I think we're leaning towards giving him a qualifying offer. And like I said, if we spend $19 million to keep that great glove with us for one more year, we've got so much money to spend that if Ohtani does make it to free agency, it's not going to prevent us from being a player for him. And if he does move on, we get some draft pick compensation. I think it totally makes sense to do that, but we're not going to make that decision until closer to the point when we really need to. And we're now a day before salary arbitration hearings, 3 days away from free agency filings. Take a look at the upcoming free agents, and it looks like, oh, these are batters only, so we're okay. Those of you who missed when I said this in our last episode, and who may have missed it in the episode when I went over our settings, two-way players are disabled. So Ohtani would be a pure pitcher for us. So still potentially Luis Robert, Yandy Diaz, Jeff McNeil among the more interesting potential bats that could be out there. Taking a look at the potential pitchers, it looks like Ohtani may make it to the market. And then between Abreu, Beeks, Hader, Heaney, Phillips, Alcantara, Shane Bieber, Raisel Iglesias, Michael King, Taylor Rogers, Huascar Ynoa from our Cincinnati Reds playthrough. There's some interesting pitching prospects out there. Clearly, bringing on Ohtani would be the one that would have the most significant potential impact on our pitching staff for the next few years. Question of how much money he's looking for and how many years he's looking for. But it would certainly be a big step towards making Buffalo a contender. Taking a look at the top catchers available, Vasquez still definitely stands out. Victor Caratini, catcher ability is a little bit above average. I just hit 209 in the majors this past year. His bat may be a little bit better than Vasquez. There's no guarantee we're going to get him. Clearly, the money's going to be a lot less. I think we're going to make the QO to Vasquez. I don't know that he's going to sign it. And if he does, clearly that takes almost $19 million of our potential money to spend next year off of the books. But even if that happens, that puts us at about $59.5 million, more than enough money if Ohtani ends up making the move to free agency and we decide to go after him. There's no reason that we can't get him, and having a excellent defensive veteran catcher like Vasquez would make sense to pair with him. So be interesting to see. He can make a little more money if he signs the QO with us for about $19 million. He can make significantly more than he's looking for, about $5 million a year more that he's looking for this upcoming season if he signs the QO. But obviously he's given up the potential of getting a 3, 4, 5-year contract and that type of security. So I tend to think he'll hit free agency, but will be interesting to see what happens. And as usual, I was wrong. Vasquez did accept the qualifying offer, so he's going to be with us for one more year at $18.9 million. We won the arbitration hearings with Max Meyer and Brandon Williamson, so both of them are back with us for next year. So we're going to have some money to spend. Let's see who's really going to be available here in free agency. And before we see whether the likes of Ohtani and Robert are on the list, let's take a look at the international free agents. Quickly, Ju Choi Kim. Looks like he could be a useful major league starter, only looking for $1.1 million a year. Obviously, we don't know much about him at this point, but he could be a interesting guy for our rotation. Closer Luis Camarena from Cuba. Don't love the personality. Only 24 years old. We think he's got a little bit of potential. Second baseman Yan Hao Lum. Really like the range and his ability to pivot at second base when turning the double play. Bat, not all that exciting. Whoa. Rohash Tasuku Nakajima, 29-year-old left fielder. Durable, looking for about $15 million a year. The home run power and the ability to draw walks both look incredible. Our scouting accuracy on all of these guys is low, unfortunately. And then Jing Shang Su out of Taiwan. Looks okay. So clearly Nakajima, probably the top line prospect or top line player who could help someone immediately. We'll spend a little time scouting through those guys, seeing if there's someone we can make a minor league offer to. Potential that we'll end up signing one or two of those guys. Javier Betancourt going to be joining our minor league system. Hall of Fame voting begins. Most importantly, though, free agent filings. And we do see Ohtani on the list, along with Robert, McNeil, Abreu, Alcantara, Jake Cronenworth, Franmil Reyes, some guys that we've talked about over the last few episodes. So let's see how bad the potential damage is going to be. You can see we've got a little over $60 million potentially to spend, so we can certainly be players. $35 million-ish for Ohtani. Although we are in a situation, as I said, where I'm not allowing two-way players, and I'm obviously not going to change the rules simply because I signed Ohtani. I do feel like there's a little bit of an insurance policy because it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of degradation in his hitting ratings, even though he hasn't been able to bat for the last several seasons since we started this playthrough. So my thought is if he ends up totally regressing as a pitcher over however long we would need to sign him, we could always move him back to being a position player. Not an ideal scenario, given that our goal is to bring him on board as a frontline starting pitcher for us. But it does give us a little bit of an insurance policy. Obviously a fan favorite, high work ethic, popularity almost off the charts, has a 5-pitch arsenal of above average to excellent pitches. His stuff is excellent, movement average, control a little bit above average, still throwing in the high 90s. I don't necessarily want to make a 7 or 8 year commitment to him, which may be what he's looking for, but I think that we talked about in our previous episode that starting pitching is a key focus of ours for this offseason. We've got tons of money to spend. I anticipate we'll have plenty of money into the foreseeable future. We have to consider going after Ohtani. He's only looking for 6 years, and he's looking for $34 million-ish average. He wants a no-trade clause, wants a vesting option for that 6th year. This actually seems like something we could potentially work with. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible. Going to try to give as much optionality to the team as possible. I also may actually try to front load it a bit since we've got that money to spend this upcoming season. Now, clearly, if we front load it too much, that limits our potential opportunity to make a move for some of these other players. Luis Robert certainly would help in center field, but given that we've now got both Siri and DeLuca to play the position, and Robert is fragile and also looking for big money. I don't think we would pursue him unless we lose out on Ohtani and Robert happens to still be around. And then other than that, there's the guys who are out there are people we can potentially afford even if we do front load Ohtani's contract. Sandy Alcantara, 4-pitch arsenal, excellent stamina, throws in the triple digits. Stuff and movement are average. His control is excellent. Doesn't look like he's necessarily the same pitcher that had that Cy Young Award season in 2022, followed up by a good mythical year here or fictional year here in 2023, but still could be a useful starter. And then Shane Bieber looking for $9 million because he's classified as a reliever is kind of interesting to me. I like the 5-pitch arsenal, even though the 5th pitch isn't that great. Slightly above average stuff and movement, excellent control. Going to keep the ball on the ground, has a good work ethic. He's kind of a 5-inning pitcher as a starter, but 5 good innings has value. And he's only looking for a 1-year deal. So I think there's potentially something we can do with these guys. We're going to come up with some offers and get them out there. And as I talked about, Ohtani looking for a little over $34 million a year, wants a 6-year contract with a vesting option in that 6th season, no trade clause, pretty big bonuses for Cy Young and All-Star awards. Not going to give him exactly that, but I'm going to try to come up with something that might be interesting to him. All right, we've got a potential offer for Ohtani that's going to be $32.5 million a year over 6 years, so about $1.7 million a year less than he's looking for. Somewhat front-loaded with $44 and $40 million and $36 the first 3 years, and then the numbers get to be a much more reasonable 30, 25, and then 20 with a vesting option, and we kick the innings up to the 162 to qualify for the ERA title to knock him into that option. We did take out the no trade clause, and we kept the bonuses for Cy Young and All-Star the same. I think it's certainly a reasonable starting point. We'll see what he thinks. He's willing to think about it. So 6 years at an average of $32.5 million. We've got money this year. I think we're going to have money next year, so we definitely have front-loaded it to hopefully make it somewhat more palatable in those later seasons. If we're a competing team that needs the money to sign free agents, it'll help us do that several years down the line. And if Ohtani becomes less productive, the contract will be somewhat more easy for us to potentially trade with those lower numbers in the future. So we're going to go ahead and submit that offer to Shohei Ohtani, 6 years, $195 million to come to Buffalo and potentially be our ace. And we're also going to try to do something with Shane Bieber. As I mentioned, he's only looking for a 1-year deal at $9 million a year. I think we'd like to potentially have the optionality for more than that with him. I don't know whether he really just wants a 1-year prove-it deal or we would consider something a little longer. We're going to offer him something a little longer and see what he thinks. So Bieber looking for 1 year at $9 million. We are going to offer him 3 years at an average of $8 million a year. And we're going to also put in team options for those last 2 years. I don't think he's going to love this because of the team options at the lower levels, but it does give him an opportunity to make more money this coming season than he would have otherwise. Tend to think he's probably not going to let us submit this, but let's see. He's willing to talk about it, so that's good. This, I think, would be a really good deal for the Wings. Get to see what we've got in him, if he can really be an effective 5-inning starter for us for $10 million this year when we've got money to spend, and then we've got the options to potentially bring him back each of the next 2 seasons before he even gets into his mid-30s. So we're going to go ahead and submit that offer of 3 years, $24 million as well. So the off-season is off and running here with big offers to Ohtani and Shane Bieber. Obviously, we'll probably be doing more than that. As I said, I've got to spend some time on those international free agents. Clearly, if we're able to add Ohtani and or Bieber, either of them will be a boost to our starting pitching. If we're able to add both of them, a real big boost to Buffalo's starting pitching. And then we've obviously got Christian Vasquez back as our starting catcher since he accepted that qualifying offer. So really just looking for a little help on the margins in the infield. Perhaps a starting first baseman, perhaps someone who's a competent middle infielder who's not all that expensive, given our expectation that last year's this season's number one draft pick Seifu is going to be up on the major league roster at some point during the season. So I think if we can lock in 1 or 2 of these pitchers, hopefully both of them, then we would turn our attention to maybe a player or 2 to help our infield, but we're not necessarily looking to break the budget on either of those. Clearly, Ohtani and Bieber would be the 2 big guns for us to go after in free agency this year. And we'll find out how those pursuits go in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.